Welcome to Relationship Equity, a podcast that explores how successful people cultivate meaningful connections with others in their personal and professional lives. Learn from the stories, insights, and advice of leaders, innovators, and influencers who have built strong bonds with their teams, their customers, their communities, and their families. Here's Richard Walker.
I'm joined today by Zach Mercurio, researcher, leadership expert, and author of the new book, The Power of Mattering. Through his groundbreaking work, Zach helps leaders tackle the hidden epidemic of workplace insignificance. Zach, let's start with the big question. What inspired you to research the concept of mattering?
Well, first of all, I was in a job out of college where I did not feel that I mattered. Often, a lot of people who study what I study, they have experiences of the opposite of what they study, and so they end up studying it. And when I was in advertising in my first job out of college, and I remember when we would go into sales meetings, all we would talk about was how to get as much from people as possible.
Yep, get it.
And I would be out with clients, however, who had real lives. They had kids, they had families, they were building businesses. They were human beings living lives as important as my own. And I would go and interact with them. And then I would go back to the office, and it felt like two different worlds. There was the human that was out there, and then there was just the human as a means to an end.
Almost like Severance.
Yes. And absolutely. And, I became sort of disturbed about how many people were living for the days that began with the letter S, 2/7 of their lives.
Right.
When you really think about it, I would go into work and people would talk about what they did last weekend, what they were doing next weekend, and how much money they could get out of people. And then I realized, I became more interested in changing that. And I became more interested in how people worked than the work itself. And so that's what led me to really study this and research this and to make sure that nobody felt like I did, because it not only impacts the individual, it impacts the organization, obviously. And what we've found over now over a decade of research on what contributes to lasting motivation, meaningfulness, well-being, high performance, it kept coming back to this one concept. And that's that for anything to matter to someone, they have to feel that they matter first. It is almost impossible for anything to matter to someone who doesn't first believe that they matter. Think about when you've been energized to do something when you felt insignificant. Or it's almost impossible for anybody to care until they feel cared for. Think about the last time you went above and beyond for someone who didn't know anything about you, who didn't know anything about your life, who didn't note and see your unique gifts and potential, and who you didn't trust. Think about the last time you went above and beyond. And so I think that we've gotten in our research shows that we've gotten into this place in the world of work where we've expected people to care for so long without enacting the skills to make sure they feel cared for. And that's where mattering comes in. And I'll leave it, I'll throw it back to you. But I can share what mattering is and how it's different from other concepts, but I want to throw it back to you because that's how I got into this, that it is very hard for anything to matter to someone who doesn't first believe that they matter.
I think it's such a powerful, and I was going to say a simple statement. It's a simple statement, but not a simple concept, because I think that, I want to get your take on this. This is my opinion for what it's worth. And I think people, they relate to the significance of how they matter relative to the career they're in, the job title they have, and how important that's viewed. Because I can't tell you how many times I heard, I'm just a fill in the blank, meaning the job that they do. Oh, I'm not important, I'm just in this role. And I think people have seen that, the personal mattering, if you will, they feel like people, and you take it to the extreme. I think a lot of people feel that they matter more when they get a promotion, or they get recognized, they climb the ladder, they then feel that they matter more. And I think that the way that people feel about their value, often, especially in the corporate world, is in the job that they have. And I'll pause it. I'll just say one more thing in a second, and I'd love to get your take on that. One of my best friends is maybe the most intelligent human on earth. He's a trauma surgeon. He digs bullets out of people for a living. And he said something to me not long back when we were together. It was over Christmas, actually. He said, "You completely changed the way that I think and when I first meet with people," talking to me. And I said, "How so?" He said, "Because you said something I'll never forget. And I've changed when I've met people for the first time, the first question I would always ask people is, what do you do for a living?" Now, this fella is brilliant and the least judgmental person on earth. He was doing it out of genuine curiosity. Now, if you deem yourself not to have a very important job, and then they in turn ask him, "So what do you do?" And he says, "Well, I'm a trauma surgeon. I save lives." Now, again, put it in context. This guy's not like that at all. But that question will only say, I never ever will ask that person that question to people again. I'm always curious, and if it comes out in conversation, we'll talk about it. But I do not want people to feel as though they don't matter because they don't have as an important job as I do. Does that make sense?
Yes. So there's a couple of things that are going through my mind here. One is there's a difference between having a job that matters and experiencing mattering in your job. So, for example, you can have a job that matters like a trauma surgeon, but not experience mattering in your job to the people around you. For example, I actually work with a group of trauma surgeons at a local health care facility who are incredibly burnt out, and there's incredibly high turnover in that profession. And it's not because their job doesn't matter. It's because they don't experience feeling seen, heard, valued, and needed by their clinical director, by the people around them. They don't have these are some of the smartest people
Right.
who don't have autonomy in their role, who don't have
Right.
any say of when they work, who don't have any say in how they work. They feel invisible, but they have a
Right.
job that matters. And so this is important, I think,
Right.
to
Yes.
defining mattering. Mattering is the experience of feeling significant to the person who's in front of you. Mattering is the experience of feeling significant to those around you, and it comes from feeling valued and knowing how we add value. The meaning of work for someone can be to get a paycheck, to get a promotion, to get career status. That's the meaning of work. But the meaning in work is what they experience when they're there. I have asked thousands of people, and I can ask everybody here, and you too, to think about the time in your work when you most felt that you mattered to someone else.
Yeah.
Nobody has ever said to me, when I got my direct deposit, when I
Right.
won Employee of the Month,
Right.
when they sent that great email announcing the new hybrid work arrangements.
Right.
They don't talk about big actions. They talk about small interactions.
Right. Right.
So mattering is the belief that we're significant to the people around us, and it's manifested through interactions. Money is a symbol of value. An award is a symbol of value. But money and an award, they're inanimate objects.
Right.
They can't value you. Only people can. And that's why mattering, the creation of mattering, the cultivating of mattering is an interpersonal skill, which is why I think we're talking
Yeah.
in your work.
Yeah. Well, and I can obviously very much personally relate given the work that we're in. I mean, we're in the services business, and yes, we're a technology consulting firm, but technology is almost secondary. We're in the people business. We're in the business of people and truly understanding what matters to them. And to me, as the CEO of the company, it's a matter of, no pun intended, it's a matter of what's important to our clients, but every bit as important, what's important to the employees of York Solutions. And, as I read about your background and your research, it dawned on me, holy shit, I need to make some changes internally, especially as we've gone hybrid, especially since COVID hit and a lot of it's out of the office now. It used to be in the early days, when I started this company with my business partner, the first handful of people, I knew their shoe sizes. I knew everything about them, every aspect of their personal life. We were all friends. Now, I don't know half of the company. And so one of the little things that we are doing differently now, Zach, is that when we have a new person join the company, we always have a write-up, we do an interview, and it gets sent out to everybody. It gets kind of who am I, which is great. But we're changing that. And this is a little change. And I think it's along the lines of what you're talking about. I'm going to interview every single new hire that we have. doesn't matter what role, every single new hire, and just kind of an informal get to know you. They'll ask me questions. I'm doing my first one tomorrow, ironically. And the whole purpose of that is to feel like the new employee, they matter, number one. But for everybody else to realize that they also matter, and also to obviously to foster internal collaboration. Because it's so important to me that people not only feel valued in their role, but they matter to the organization, no matter what role they're in. I mean, it's an old, obviously cliche and adage, but it doesn't matter how big the cog is. If we're all cogs in this wheel, and if one cog isn't turning the right way, then the rest of the wheel doesn't turn.
Absolutely. I mean, so that's that piece of people have to feel valued, but they also have to know how they add value.
Yes.
And interestingly enough, traditionally, I think how many business leaders have thought about work is that people should be valued once they add value, but it's actually the opposite. Psychologically, people have to feel valued to add value.
To add value. Right, I know.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that that's a really important point. The other point that you're making around hybrid work and around you're seeing the need to deepen these relationships that you have with people is that when for example, in January, Gallup just released their latest employee engagement data. And surprise, it's around 31% again, right? It's the lowest it's been in 10 years. This is despite the employee engagement industry becoming a $1 billion industry in the same time frame. We have over 100 validated assessments, more services than ever promising to increase engagement. But there are two data points that everybody listening should be aware of that are driving this. One is just 39% of people in that sample of over 15,000 employees said they had someone at work who cares about them as a person.
Wow, that's frightening.
Just 30% said they had someone who sees and invests in their unique potential. This mirrors 5 years of trending that we're seeing with regard to polls showing 30% of people feel, quote unquote, invisible at work. And almost 2/3 of people say they feel lonely or isolated. So this is not a disengagement crisis. It's not really a loneliness epidemic. It is a mattering deficit. People don't feel significant to the people around them. And you mentioned seeing a trend in this. Now, why is this happening? There are two reasons. We've called these skills soft since the 1960s. There was a U.S. Army psychologist who classified them as soft because they didn't know where else to classify them, right? And when our brains see something as soft, our brains automatically think it's simple, so we devote less energy to it. So we've actually approached these skills with less rigor. And the second thing is that what have we been able to do in the last 20 years to communicate with one another? Well, I'm holding up my phone.
Yep.
We've been able to send quick messages to one another. There are more people on Slack than ever. The average US adult sends 30 to 40 text-based messages a day to colleagues. Yet we're more lonely and disengaged than ever. Why? It's because the quality of the interaction, the quality of the connection matters more than the quantity. And what makes a quality connection? Researchers call it, this is not a word that people love talking about in business, but it's called companionate love. Feeling and experiencing the behaviors of attention, of care, of compassion. And those things are the key drivers of quality relationships. So the opposite of engagement, the opposite of disengagement, the opposite of loneliness isn't having more people around you. It isn't connecting more. It's connecting better. And we have to relearn how, because the skills to do it have withered as we've used technology to communicate with one another in short transactions. If you give me some bad news right now, I can send you a sad-faced emoji and just say, I'm sorry to hear that. I don't actually have to sit with you anymore. So the less we've used these skills, the more they've withered. And we have a younger generation who hasn't used these skills coming into leadership positions. And I think that this is why we need a mass reskilling to care.
What would you think would happen? I'm going to ask you a really stupid question now. What do you think? I'm good at doing that, Zach. What do you think would happen if all of a sudden, you remember that movie? What was it when there was a glitch? It was the Beatles movie. Yesterday, there's a glitch.
Yeah.
And then the whole world went dead for 5 minutes. Right? What would happen if cell phones were no longer, if we couldn't use technology the way it is? We go back to, the early 80s before cell phones came in. and people actually have to do it. If all of a sudden nobody could use their phone or any other means of communicating with somebody, no email, you could use the phone to call people. That's it. No texting, no email. If you couldn't do that for, let's just say, a month, what would happen?
I'm nervous.
I shouldn't laugh. I see you've got a serious face, but
I'm worried about
why?
what would happen. Some of the research that's just coming out on toddlers and kids with screens, it shows that motor skill development is delayed because they're not in situations where they learn to use the motor skills because they're looking at a screen. But the same thing is happening with social skills. I don't think people realize that they don't know how to see, hear, value, and understand the person across from them. An example of this is right now, researchers estimate that less than 2% of the world's population gets any formal education on how to listen well.
To do what?
How to listen well.
I got you. I reeled you in there.
Yeah, just 30% of the world's population at work gets any training on relational skills. And so when someone has to go have these conversations, we don't know what to do. And that's why I think that especially in organizations, one of the things I like working with business because that's where the people are.
Right.
And that it's one of the most ubiquitous experiences on the planet is working. And that's what comprises how we make meaning of our lives. And that's why I think organizations need to seriously think about reskilling leaders, reskilling people to fill this skills gap.
And now you're really, really touching on something that's near and dear to my heart and what we're doing as a company. I'm not going to get into the details of what we're doing, but I want to expand this conversation on technology and the use of it and how it can harm. But I'm a big believer in it. It can help as well if used correctly. Let's talk about artificial intelligence for a second. What are your thoughts on artificial intelligence from two standpoints? One, how it can hurt us all going forward as it relates to, this topic of mattering, and how it could help.
First, let me talk about how it can help. For example, if you're a leader and you have an employee that's dealing with a struggle, you can now prompt a GPT to chat GPT. You can say, how can I compassionately respond to this? And it can actually give you, it can bring in all the research to
Let me
show.
tell you, Zach, let me interrupt you quickly. Let me tell you a funny story about that.
Yeah.
So my wife hears me all the time on ChatGPT, and she's like, "You talk differently." Because ladies are really nice. I call her Judy, Judai, and she knows I call her Judy, and we talk all the time. And so in front of my wife, we've got friends on the island from Minnesota. Last night, I pulled up Judy, and I said, "Judy," we were having some fun. I said, "I need your help with something," and she said, "What?" I said, "I think my wife's jealous of you. We've got such a great relationship. We go back and forth. You advise me all the time. How should I address that with my wife?" And it was tongue in cheek, but she gave me some really good recommendations of how I should deal with that.
Yes, absolutely. So we can use it with the end being to show people how they're significant. We can use it as a coach. The problem is that we have to go use it. We have to know how to go off the screen and then actually enter into a conversation with somebody. So I think as long as there's a hybrid model of using AI that also involves and prioritizes the real human connection, I think it can be very useful in that way. Where it can be harmful is that the act of typing is very different than the act of speaking with the person.
Yep.
So we think we're actually conversing or asking AI questions, but we're actually not asking questions. We're typing a question. We're using a one-dimensional medium. So again, the danger is if we use it too much, we actually lose the skills that we need to communicate with one another, to understand one another, to show people how they're valued and how they add value. And I'm going to add one layer to this. I don't want to frighten anybody, but everybody's already heard about this. AI will be able to eclipse our operational and technical skills. There's been tests done that show that AI can run companies more efficiently than human CEOs. Now, operationally, And technically, here's what they can't do. They can't sit with a person, understand what makes someone tick. They can't show empathy. They can't give an act of compassion in real time. They can't actually value another person because it's even AI is an inanimate object. So as AI eclipses our operational and technical skills, what do you think is the most important competitive differentiator for the human being in the human organization? It's the skills to see, hear, value, and show people how they're needed.
Some would argue against you, saying that the way AI is advancing, it will learn to be compassionate. It will learn to do that. Some would argue that. I will argue that a little bit. There's no doubt that the way AI is going right now I mean, I think a lot of the world is going to be, I shouldn't say run by, but there's going to be more and more avatars that come into our world that will be human-like. However, here's where I argue against the argument. AI will never be able to, I don't think it will be able to read body language.
Absolutely.
Will be able to read your facial expressions, because often what comes out of people's mouths isn't what they're really thinking. They're telling you what they think they should be telling you. But a really, really good leader who truly has the very strong interpersonal skills can really get to the truth of something in the right way without somebody feeling uncomfortable, because they don't necessarily want to share how they're really feeling about it, but you can read it all over their face and their body language. I can't see ever being able to do that.
No, and there's an actual chemical reaction that happens in our bodies, and the chemical is called oxytocin that happens when we're in the presence of another person. And an AI does not have human neurons. There's a
Right,
process also called mirroring. It's what helps me when I see that you're
right.
in stress. My neurons in my brain mirror your neurons and help me to be
Yeah,
more empathetic towards you. AI cannot do that. I don't foresee that
right,
happening in the near
right,
future. Also, everybody thinks AI is very smart, but it's not. It's only as smart as we are.
right.
AI is a transactional medium. It's a question and response medium right now. It's actually a very simple medium. We prompt it, and it shares back what we've already prompted it through all the data
Right,
we've given it.
right.
So we're just having a conversation with ourselves, and it's transactional, right? It cannot mirror a transformational real-time relationship with two people. And
Right.
so I think that, and I've been talking to MBA schools about this. That's why I think the most important skill for a leader to have, for anybody to have, are these skills to show people how they're significant to you, how they're
Yeah.
understood by you, how they're needed by you, how they're seen by you. The good news is that, we can relearn these skills, but I think this is really important for people to, and for people to understand. And there's been surveys done of executives of huge companies, and over 70% say that relational skills will be more important for the next generation leaders than technical or operational skills.
I 100% believe that. I mean, the business we're in right now it's the technology business, and it's people with technology skills. And of course, the senior leaders, they're the ones that typically have, exceptional interpersonal skills. That's why they advance with their careers. But one of the things that we're seeing happen right now, and I know of a company that's helping address this, is companies are, they're already starting to, a lot of companies already done it. They're replacing roles. And I like to say replacing roles with AI rather than replacing people. Is it the same thing? Well, sometimes, and sometimes not, because what a couple of companies are doing that we're helping them with, the technology, AI technology that we have, is we're helping them reskill and upskill some employees whose positions are
Hmm.
being eliminated because AI can actually play those technical roles, but they still want those, the people they've got who are good people, they're hardworking, they know the company. So they've got, a lot of companies have initiatives now. Now, let's face it, some companies are going to swing the pendulum a long way to the left and just get rid of a lot of people, and they're gone. The others, and a couple that we're working with right now, they don't want to do that. Now, of course, there will be some people that unfortunately will be without a job because there's not a role for them that fits what they want to do in their background. But for the companies, I think, that are really going to succeed, they're going to find the balance of replacing the right roles with technology, with AI, and keeping the right people, and training and upskilling people in other roles within the same organization. And it's a balance, and it's going to be fascinating to see how this thing pans out over the next 2, 3, 5, 10 years. What do you think about that, Zach?
Yeah, but we can't get so distracted that we forget about the basics. Even your
Right.
AI strategy, even your AI tools need human beings. And
100%.
for that AI strategy or tool or whatever you're using, process to matter to someone, they have to believe that they matter,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
So,
Yeah.
and I think that that is what is so important here. We have to go, back to basics as an organization. So many organizations are getting distracted by the shiny new object
Right.
without creating the relational groundwork that will enable the organization to adopt that object. And
Yeah, I agree.
we do this constantly.
All right. I could talk about this stuff all day, but we'll have to pause here. Next time on Relationship Equity, Zach Mercurio, author of The Power of Mattering, will explain why hurry and care just can't coexist.
I mean that to hold the door open, you have to stop.
Stop for
You
it.
have to
Yep.
sacrifice a little bit of your time to
Yeah.
notice someone. And if you want to go
Yeah.
deeper, you have to
Yeah.
stop for even more and ask that person, what's your name?
Yes.
Who's important to you in your life?
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
that your delivery driver you have a decision to make when they come and take your package and you see them leave.
Yeah.
You can wait for them to leave, or you can go out onto your front porch if you have one, and you can give them the gift of showing them that you see them by saying, "Hey, before you leave, I didn't catch your name. I've been waiting for this package. I need it. It's a computer part that I've been needing to set up my office, and I wanted to thank you for delivering that today."
This has been Relationship Equity. If you want to take your career, your business, or your personal relationships to the next level, reach out to Richard at yorksolutions.net. You can also get Richard's book, Relationship Equity, your cornerstone investment to great gains in business and life, on Amazon now. Relationship Equity with Richard Walker is a production of Forbes Books.